So this final section of this character rig is kind of bonus content. What we've done is we built this entire rig here, and what I want to talk about is the realistic next steps. And this is often what we don't get into in school, which is what actually happens when you're in something like the workplace. Now, I do want to emphasize that what I'm about to tell you is probably more accurate to the video game industry, since that's the industry I have the most experience in. But when you're working in video games, you'll generally have your local files that are located on your desktop. And, it kind of depends on the company, depends on the setup. I've worked remote, so I usually have them locally. And then what's going to happen is we're going to pipe these into version control. But what I want to emphasize is, what do we pipe into version control? Do we pipe in all our work in progress? No. What we want to do is we basically want to bring in our final files. Now, I am not working with a version control software, but it doesn't mean that we can't create a similar system. So what I want to show you is I have a file here called Finished 3D Rigs that I have on my Vertmode drive. And I have a file here, which is where I actually built the darn rig, which is somewhere within a class folder that I'm teaching. What I can do is I can go ahead and take my file here for this rig, and I can essentially either move it or copy it. Now, I'm going to copy it for an important factor, and that's that this is on my teaching drive that I teach from. If you're drag and dropping, though, into a version control generally is on another drive, or it depends on how you have it set up, and it will copy. But the big thing is we want to copy because we want to keep our local files in case we need to work. What we want the world to see, though, is the final files. So I'm going to copy this over, Control-C, Control-V. This might take a moment, depending on what we have. I'm going to go ahead and close out my personal file because I don't want to edit anything there. And I'm going to come into the one that's going to an animator and clean this up. So in the scenes here, I'll just go ahead and kind of change things. First off, though, let's go ahead and set this. Let's go to Copy. Let's go to File, Set Project. Just make sure it's going to work. Sometimes when we set things, it doesn't want to work. But generally speaking, we should be able to set project here. Get the junk body set up here and, open up what we need to open up. So our character should be in here, our rig should be in here. And one of the things I'm going to do is with my control rig here, my work in progress, I'm just going to go ahead and open this, and I'm going to resave it, which is kind of funny. But it should all be here because we set a project, right? I'm going to save scene as. I'll go ahead and go to the upper folder here, and I'll just go ahead and name this junk body control rig and save. Now, if we wanted to, we could do a reference that references the control rig and the skin rig into a final rig, but I'm going to leave it where we have it currently. However, that's going to be step one. All right. Now, why was that important? Because we still want to have this control rig file in case someone else needs to come along and edit this. That isn't us, right? So let's go under our rigs here, come under control rig. What we can do now is just right click and delete the work in progress. So what we're going to show our team, show our animators, is the final product. Whoever gets this passed on to, they're not going to worry about your work in progress. They're just going to have your control rig, right? The same goes with any skin, right? You have a work in progress folder, delete that. We don't need it. Don't create a shortcut. Oops. Delete that and delete a shortcut if you made it. That way, what's in the skin rig is the final rig. We know this is where the skin rig lives. This is where the control rig lives. Test animations, we don't need those anymore. We can delete this. Rigging assets, our own tools. In this case, it was our control curve collection. We don't need that. All right. So what we end up with is just control rig, skin rig, and junk buddy rig 01. All right. Now, what might be a little bit better here is if this was within a subfolder that was called junk buddy rig. Now, I'm not going to do that because the reference system is essentially going to require me to re-reference everything. So I don't want to go to that extent at this time, but we can see how this is set up here. If you want to include the geometry files, you can. If this is a rig that's like done, it's good to go. You're not referencing the geometry at all, you could get rid of that. But you do have to double check that you're not referencing the geometry, and I think we actually are. So remember, if we come into our open scene and we come in here to the skin file and to the skin rig, I'm pretty sure we're using a reference to bring in the geo. So you want to make sure that stays undisturbed. The one thing I might do, though, in this particular instance is get rid of the OBJ file because that might just confuse people. And we're good to go, I think. At this point, we have our source images set up. We have our scene set up. We just have a nice clean rig. And this is something we could hand off to other people. So that's going to be the process there of kind of doing your final cleanup and turning this into something that other people can use. All right. Now that I have this little folder set up, I think we're good to go, and we're good to kind of pass this on and make sure everyone has fun animating. All right. The one last thing I would say is feel free to clean up any skin weights that you might have issues with. I did notice on this one here, there is a bit of an issue in terms of how I weighted this. So just kind of as a side note, because we're using a reference system, we can do that. That's what's really cool. I could come into my skin here. I could go ahead and open this up, and we could go ahead and take a look at that problematic area. So if I go ahead and turn on the wireframe here, it's happening in this area, kind of across these, I think, where I think I got a little bit too greedy on this one. And rather than just blending between this one, and this one, I didn't. So let me reset this real quick. And you can fix up any issues like that you have before you kind of move forward. Yeah, so you can see as I'm bending that one, it's not really adjusting this or this or this. So let me go ahead and switch that out. And just kind of recap, if we come in here to our rigging skin, paint skin weights, double click this. The way we did this refinement is we just locked these down. So we just locked everything, and then we unlocked the next in line. So in this case, it was this. We unlocked that. We unlocked this. And then we just did a smooth here, and we flooded that out. You can see how that makes a pretty big difference there on just making that look a little bit nicer. I don't really think I need to do much more than that. I actually think I liked it that way a little bit better, so let's just bias it this way. And then this final one here, it's kind of the same deal. I could go ahead and come into this here, grab this edge, and this edge, and go ahead and refine these. So this is something I noticed when I was doing the control setup. I did kind of rush through these, so I was pretty worn out when I actually got to doing this. And I felt that this could be refined a little bit better here in terms of the setup to create a better looking shape. And you do have to be kind of conscious that some influence might still be mapped to something else. You'll see I'm getting that dark area there. What that indicates is that this is actually affecting this area a bit too much. So I could determine, if I want that in there at all. It really just depends on if this is giving me a shape I like or not. When I do this, and I don't know if it is, which is kind of interesting. Looking at the effect that this is having, what I might do is come into this edge here, and even this edge, go to Control Vertices, come all the way back up here to this knuckle here, and just say, hey, let's unlock that, and let's go ahead and replace this with 0. Why is that not working? I might need to uncheck this. All right, so let's select this influence, and let's go ahead and replace that with 0. I might even go as far as to do that with this one. Flood that to 0. So now this should not be controlling that. And I think this is the other trick, is I need to come into this edge here. And I need this edge to not be controlled by this. So let me go ahead and flood that. There we go. I think that's the issue I made. So let's go ahead and get back to where this is bent and this is bent. And then just blend this between those two. And I think that'll give me the cleaner look. So you guys might not need to do this if you're paying attention and weren't half awake like I was. I did this on the weekend, on a Saturday. I should have been living life, but that is the way things seem to be anymore. All right, so let's go ahead and smooth this out, and we can go back and do it to here as well. Just kind of smooth this, and we might need to play around with that other influence, the upper knuckle, in terms of what it is and is not controlling. Sometimes the easiest way to do this is to actually come back into here and to kind of reflood, which sounds crazy, but the nice thing is, working with this isolated system, you can do that kind of nicely. So I could come back in here to add. We could replace that with a value of 1. So that's controlling that area fully. And then just kind of reblend this. Since I'm now seeing the error of my ways, We could start by blending between this knuckle here and the next one down. And I do just want to emphasize, try not to be in a hurry when you're rigging. Otherwise, this kind of stuff happens. I know some of you watching this are students, and you're just like, hey, that's not a thing. I'm always in a hurry. Well, yeah. Also, make sure you're not accidentally flooding with add and you're flooding with smooth. Well, that makes a big difference. Oops. All right, so that'll get that looking better, and then we can finally do this one here to get this one looking better. Let's unlock that. Let's unlock this. And then flood these out, and that should give me a better system. All right. Cool. So make sure we go back to our bind pose. So go to bind pose, and that will go ahead and kind of clean up that area. So don't be afraid to come in here, make adjustments, do cleanups, all the stuff you guys need to do. Hopefully with the referencing system, you can do all that with a good deal of confidence and have an understanding of how all this works and comes together. I am noticing, though, I might want to blend that a little bit more between those areas, which is interesting. Trying to think, this guy. It's funny how it's like 2 steps forward and 1 step back sometimes. Yeah, I'm going to blend that a little bit more here between these two. Maybe I gave that the wrong influence. But that shape feels a little bit weird, so let's go ahead and get back up here and continue to blend these. All right, and smooth that out. All right, I feel like that's feeling a bit better, so I'll go to skin, bind, skin. Oops, I don't want to skin, bind, skin. Don't make that mistake. Let's go back to bind pose. And then I just want to double check that all of these are bending nicely and giving me a nice shape. And that's good enough for what I'm looking for. I don't think that's too bad. So there we go. But that'll get us there. Just make sure that any changes you do, they're reflected, echoed, save, and then, do testing as needed. But hopefully that gives you a better idea on finishing this thing out and going back and adjusting it. And now you have some confidence with rigging. The next steps for you guys after you finish this project is to actually start looking into facial rigs specifically. I don't have any material on that now, but stay tuned and maybe down the road I will have some for you.